Excel 2013 saw the introduction of recommended pivot tables. Now, if you've never used pivot tables before, or you need a quick pivot table, the recommended pivot tables option is absolutely fantastic. Now, there are two ways of accessing the recommended pivot tables. The first is to simply have some data open, as we have here with the employees file. Go to Insert on the ribbons, come down to Recommended Pivot Tables, give it a click. Just watch behind to make sure it's picked up the right data, which it will do as long as there are no gaps in columns and rows. You can have gaps in some of the data, but you can't have a fully empty column or a fully empty row. Now, with our data, it's then recommending a number of tables. We have this first one, count of ID by marital status. So that's going to count how many people are in each of the marital status. We have 47 singles, 9 divorced, 43 married, and then 1 blank, so an undefined one. Or we could have sum of salary by marital status. So it's adding up the total salary bill each of the marital status. We then have sum of sex by marital status. Well, that's just really counting how many people there are as well. Count of ID, sum of salary, so that's doing two things. That's based on the person's title, and then counting how many there are, and then summing their salary. Sum of salary and count of ID. Okay, they're starting to get a bit messy. This one's quite useful. Sum of salary by county. You can see it's summing up the total by county. And it has a little plus next to each one, so it will actually expand when we click. Sum of salary by department, so the total salary bill for each department. Sum of sex by department, again, not very applicable. Sum of sex by county, same issue, and sum of sex by title. These are the recommended ones. The ones that I personally quite like are sum of salary by department, sum of salary by county, and then the actual count of people by marital status. If you quite like any of them, you simply select the one you want. So let's go for the sum of salary by department, and then OK. And a new pivot table is inserted in a new sheet. You can see there, sheet 1. So my TVL employee still exists, nothing gets amended there. It just creates a new pivot table for me in a new sheet. How quick was that? We can do the same thing again. So we click into the data, insert recommended pivot table, and choose a different one. Let's go for the first one. Now that inserts itself in another new sheet. So we're going to have sheet 2, which is the marital status sums, and sheet 1, which is the total salary by department. These can be renamed. They're simply just new sheets with the pivot table dropped into them. Salary by department and employees by status. Now, the alternative method we could do with our employees is just to highlight part of a data set. Let's take the towns and the people's names. We'll take them all the way to the bottom, except for that last one. Now, sometimes when you highlight a selection, you'll get a little pop-up box here. It doesn't always appear though, but you'll find that if you right-click, you can choose Quick Analysis, and that will give you the pop-up box from within which we can choose tables. And then there are a number of our little recommended pivot tables. And all you need to do is hover, and you can see it produces each little recommended table as a pop-out until you see the one you like. I like that one, count of ID by county, marital status, breakdown of county and town, or the title count. I quite like this one. If I like that one, I click. It produces me a new pivot table in a new sheet, now called sheet 3. I'm going to call that county town breakdown. And that's actually counting how many people are in each county, and then within each town within each county. So County Durham has 1 town, but North Yorkshire has 3, and we get the breakdown for the 3 towns. Teesside has 3, and again we get the breakdown. Town and Weir 1, West Yorkshire 2, and we get the breakdown. So that's come from the same data, but using that slightly different route of highlighting part of the data, choosing from the Quick Analysis pop-up toolbar, tables, and then just stepping through the recommended pivot tables. Alternatively, as we did the other two, you simply click into the data, in which case it will use all the data on the sheet, assuming there's no blank columns and rows. Insert recommended pivot table, and that's when you get the floaty box with the recommended pivot tables in. So a very quick way of creating pivot tables